Hey YouTube, it's your girl Dr. J, and I thought I'd come and do a quick video on fractions. Fractions is a subject that we actually hit pretty early in our homeschool. My kids usually start fractions when they're in finishing up first grade, going into second grade math. And these are some of the resources that I found that were really helpful in reinforcing fractions. These are just resources when your child is just learning fractions. So it isn't focused on doing things like adding, subtracting, multiplying fractions, but it's really just helping them understand what are fractions, how to identify fractions, what's a numerator versus a denominator, that sort of stuff. First things I'm going to talk to you guys about are some books. This one is called Fraction Fun. It is by DAJedu. And it's really neat because in addition to there being kind of a story about fractions, there are also a lot of different activities that your child can do at home, and they use basic household materials that are, that you can find all over the house. So this is a really good book on fractions. This is a really fun book. It is called Full House, and An Invitation to Fractions by DAJedu, and it is just a fun story. It has a really good flow. It is a rhymed story, and there is a repeating clause so that your child can really begin to pick up on what is the same throughout the story. So you can actually start to use this book with a really early child. Probably a 3 or 4 year old can begin to understand the concept of fractions with this particular book, Full House. This one is called Fractions, Decimals, and Percents, and it is really neat because it goes over some different fractions that you aren't likely to see in books. Like this one has like 41 over 100, which is 41%, or 41 cents. Usually a lot of early introductions into fractions, they break things down into 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, that sort of thing. But this one is going to show some of the more abstract fractions that a child probably wouldn't see except for when they were doing repetition and workbook pages or something like that. So this is a really good book. Again, DAJedu. Apple Fractions. This is also a really neat book by Jerry Pulata, and it has some really, in addition to doing fractions, it also has some really interesting facts about apples. Okay, it goes through all the different types of apples, Granny Smith and Red Delicious and Macintosh and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of fun there. Even goes into oranges. But it breaks things down between a whole and a half and a third and an eighth. So this is another really fun book. Really quick, easy read. Something that's going to be really interesting for your child, and you guys can do some really break-off sessions in it too by kind of testing out different apples, buying one Red Delicious, one Macintosh, one Granny Smith, and doing a little compare and contrast to see if you can see the differences in the apples as well, along with cutting them into the various fractions that you find in the book. So another really cool, neat story to really get your child to have a good concept and reinforcement of fractions. Another thing that I like, this is a math wrap-up, and this math wrap-up is on fractions, and each key goes into different fractions that your child will figure out. I really like these because if you can see, I don't know if I think barely you can see kind of the grooved edges, and that's how your child can self-check their answer to see if their answer is right. But they just kind of go through it, and as they're going through the wrap-up, they'll just look at the problem and wrap around for the correct answer. And it's a really fun game that they can use to get some good repetition in. They can begin to time themselves to really help with speed and accuracy. And because it's self-checking, even a younger child, like my first graders, are able to really do these on their own. We have them for addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all the way up through pre-algebra and functions. And this one is on fractions. And they get progressively harder. Like this is the last one, the things that they'll have to figure out. Okay, so turning fractions into decimals, whereas the first wrap up that they'll do is just being able to match a visual representation with the fraction to the fraction written out in its numeric form. So that's a really good hands-on activity. I also have these. These are called equivalency cubes, and they are nice because one side is a fraction, one side is a decimal, and one side is a percent. And so they can, you know, easily see the differences there. And then they're also in this particular order, so you can see that one whole is the same size as 2 halves, and 1 half is, you know, is exactly the same. And then it goes all the way to 12ths. So, you know, and 12ths is 8.3% and 0.083. So, and then 1/12, they can see the size of 1/12 versus 1. So it's really neat, and they snap together. So that's another really neat hands-on thing that we have that we work with. Another one is a fraction board. Again, color coordinated, and it's gonna go all the way to 12th, and you just, you know, play with the board pieces. You can take the board pieces out, and so your child can play with these on paper, in the box, on the floor, and they come in a little self-locking wood box. So that's another fun little hands-on way to deal with fractions. And I also have this little kit, and as you can see, it's different disc, and this would be the 1/12, and then it's going to go all the way to the red disc that's just 1. So, and I believe it's coordinated. It is color coordinated with this set that I showed you guys. So you can see my red 1 is the same as this red 1, and then my 1/12 is black, the same way that this 1/12 piece is black. So because they're color coordinated, you can use these together, and so they're really good at reinforcing those concepts with your kids. So that's another really fun thing. I love when things are color coordinated across product, because it really helps with fluency. Another thing I love with fractions is just things like measuring cups, using different measuring cups for things. And these are just, you know, we use these when we do kids in the kitchen type stuff, when my kids are cooking and that sort of stuff. So don't forget about, you know, using cooking utensils with your kids to teach fractions. Different types of measuring cups, all those sort of things. And these are good because you can use them with water and color tablets. You can use them with sand, or you can use them to actually make different types of foods that your children will be able to figure out the fractions for. So fractions it's just one of those things that you want to make sure your kids really get it, and really get it pretty deeply, because they're going to be using them a lot. Another thing that I like is introducing fractions along with decimals, so that your child is getting both of those at the same time, because sometimes they learn one and understand it more deeply than the other, so they can get transfer knowledge that way, and it doesn't feel like they have to learn something new, but it's just transferring skill, just like they had to learn that there's an uppercase A and a lowercase a. They can learn that there is, you know, we write, you know, this 1/2 is the same as 0.5, it's the same as 50%. So just like an A is always an A, you know, percents, and fractions will go together as well. So hope this helps as far as some resources that you can use to reinforce fractions with your children. These are some of the things that I use with my kids. And again, this is just reinforcing the basic concept of fractions. This is not what we use when we go to start adding and subtracting and multiplying fractions. Some of the things we will use, like my little cuneiform rods, these things that we can use when we talk about adding and subtracting fractions. But when we get into multiplication of fractions, we'll use some different resources, and I'll show you guys those at a different time. But this is kind of that introductory level when you're first getting your child used to fractions, seeing fractions, writing fractions. So hopefully this helps. This is Dr. J, and I'm out. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.